Creativity begins with a spark, a note, a beat, a rhythm, a melody, a rhyme. That's when the world vanishes and imagination explodes. Creativity begins with a word, an idea, a feeling, a sound, a tune. Creativity is free, uncomplicated. The world comes into focus and unites into a single chorus. Creativity begins with connection. Without boundaries, without limits, creativity begins here.
Hello everybody and welcome to our Personas Studio 16 launch presentation. I couldn't be more excited to be here. My name is Gregor Bayerle, I'm a product specialist here at Personas, and let's kick it off right away. Here's Studio 16. Enjoy.
Hey, Joe Gilder here. Want to go over some improvements to the start page with Studio One version 6. First up, new organization features. The recent files list is where I spend most of my time when I'm on the start page. And in the past, we've been able to do things like pin certain documents so that when we scroll down through our list, especially if we're working on a lot of stuff over a given month, we can see them quickly because there's a little pin next to them. We've made that a little bit more helpful by adding a pinned section to the start of the song list. So now anything that I have pinned will always be right here. So I can find the songs that I'm working on right now very quickly and easily, and when I'm done with them and don't want them pinned anymore, I can just unpin them like that. Another great addition, if you right-click on a document here, for example, I've got several versions of All in My Head. If I right-click on it, we've added this section here that gives us a lot of information about that particular song in this instance. So I can see the sample rate, the tempo, even the number of tracks and how long it is, all without having to actually open it. So if we're, sitting around and somebody says, hey, what's the tempo of All in My Head? I can just right click and say, 74. Bam. It's just right there. Little things like this are what won me over to Studio One all those years ago. I spend most of my time in the recent files list. However, if you go to the songs list, projects list, or shows list, you'll now see the ability to see the folders within that songs folder. And you can actually create new folders right here from within Studio One, so you really never have to leave Studio One. Next, artist profiles. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll see I have an artist profile set up here that has my picture, my name, the genre, and my website. That's super handy when I'm working on my own music, but when I'm working on someone else's music, guess what? This artist profile information gets applied to any new song that I create. And so if I want to change it to a different artist, I have to do that on a song-by-song basis. Not anymore with version 6. You'll notice a cute little piece of paper here you can click on, and I can add different artists. So let's say I want to do a separate artist for my band, Stare Down. And the genre is rock. The website doesn't exist. And we can even add a new image here. And being that Studio One is built around drag and drop, I can take the image and just drag it right there. Studio One says, let me scale this to the appropriate size. I say, sure. And now we've got an image there. So if I'm working on a Stare Down project, I can select that artist profile here. then create my new project or song. And then you can easily switch between them. Now, you may not want an artist profile here forever. Maybe it's a temporary project. A few months later, the project's done. You can remove that artist from this list to keep things nice and tidy. Up next, simplified installation workflow. If you've used Studio One for any length of time, you know we've had a couple of different menus for how to install things. We've now consolidated all of that inside of this one Studio One installation window. Now, anything that you own shows up here and is waiting for you to say, I want to install this, I want to install this, and it'll just automatically happen behind the scenes. This is especially helpful if you're a Sphere member because, as you might know, being a Sphere member entitles you to all of these extras. And if you're not sure which ones you have and which ones you don't, you can now access all of that right here within Studio One, including cool things like any demos and tutorial files that we have. So songs that we've put together for you to play around with and get to know Studio One. It's all right here in one window. You can install all of them or only the ones that you select. How to start a new song. You might notice up here in the top left-hand side, when you click on New, it gives you the option of lots of different things that you can start from here. So if you want to just record and mix a song, if you want to do mastering project, if you want to use the show page, you can now access and start all of those within these new templates that we've created for you. And as always, you can save your own templates and start from there as well. For example, if I want to master and release a new project, I can call this Cool New Project. And from within this window here, I can go ahead and drag the files that I want to master right here, and Studio One will create the whole thing. So let's go grab some, let's assume these weren't MP3s, but it'll actually work. I can drag those there. It'll say, sweet, those are the files that I'm going to bring in. I can say, ready, set, go. And Studio One, this new feature in version 6, will create the project. It'll also go ahead and import everything right away. Next, easily join Sphere workspaces. You may have noticed there is now a join button here on the start page. If you're a PreSonus Sphere member, you have access to workspaces, which are places in the cloud where you can collaborate with other users on different songs and projects. So if I click on this, this will log me into my Sphere account, and I can quickly access any workspaces that have been shared with me and add them here into Studio One. So for example, this padded cell workspace, I'm going to add this song here to my Studio One installation. It will automatically roll with downloading all the files that need to be on my computer to make that work, opens the folder, shows me where those are, and says, hey, everything is now here and waiting for you. Now, if I navigate to the Songs tab, I can see there is now a shared folder, and I can select those songs and open them right from here. There's much more to explore with version 6, but here are some of the highlights of the new and improved start page.
One of the absolute highlights for me personally in Studio One 6 are the brand new plugin updates that we have, especially for Pro EQ, which comes in its newest iteration, Pro EQ 3. Pro EQ 3 is now finally a dynamic equalizer, which has some inherent advantages over the classic EQ and is sure to become indispensable to any mix engineer producer in no time. Let's take a look. So here from Studio One's browser, inside of the effects section, we find the Pro EQ and we just insert it onto the track by dragging and dropping in classic Studio One fashion. And now you'll notice this brand new dynamics button that we have here. And when you click on show, then you'll see these new parameters for each of the bands, except the low frequency and the high frequency cut. And those would be threshold and range. So before we had Pro EQ 3, you were only able to attenuate a frequency statically, like this. For example, let's say there's a peaking mid-range frequency, and the only way I can get that under control is by making the mid-range of the whole instrument dull overall. So I had to do that by hand. But now what you can do is click here on this little D to access dynamic mode, and then you can just set a threshold. This means that only when the level of that frequency range is exceeding a certain limit that you're setting, that's when the cello gets attenuated. So we can use it now to control peaks instead of making the cello dull overall to fix this problem. And that's so much more transparent and so much better sounding because the instrument retains more of its original sound that way. And also Pro EQ just does an incredible job at setting the attack and release exactly right so that you don't even hear it working. you just reap the benefits, which is more headroom to display other instruments that also need that frequency range better in the mix. I almost prefer using the dynamic EQ now over classic EQing 9 out of 10 times. And especially because the Pro EQ3 also features the sidechain function. This is kind of the secret sauce of all of my mixes. What this allows you to do is bring in a different instrument, like for example, I have this saxophone playing, and that doesn't really get through the cello, doesn't really cut through the mix. And instead of just making the saxophone louder, which would be the classic solution, I can go into the sidechain menu here and tell the Pro EQ that's currently sitting on the cello, hey, every time the saxophone comes in, please just attenuate the frequency range that the saxophone needs. And you can see every time that saxophone is playing, the cello is making the space in the important frequency spectrum of around 2 kilohertz. This also works great if you have like vocals and you want to sit them onto a huge playback with tons of stuff going on, and it's really hard to make the lyrics understandable in the important mid-range frequencies. Then just use this Pro EQ3 to fix all of your problems in one go. You just apply the Pro EQ3 onto the playback bus or track or whatever you have, and then set the range to whichever frequency is most dominant in the vocal, and then set the sidechain to the vocal. And every time the vocal comes in, the Pro EQ will duck that frequency range in the playback, but as soon as the vocal stops, it stops doing that, so you can't even hear that this is actually happening. It's super transparent, and everything that remains is just headroom that you're getting back. Another really nice addition to each of the frequency bands of Pro EQ3, except low and high cut, is the solo button right here. Click here on solo, find the problematic frequency, and then just attenuate it with the classic method. Or click on this D here to use my preferred method, dynamic EQ. One of the brand new plugin additions in Studio One 6 is a dedicated de-esser, which uses the same principle as the dynamic EQ that we looked at already, but is specialized on attenuating these very sharp frequencies like S or like these crash cymbals that you have sitting in the upper frequency spectrum. It does a great job at that, it's super transparent. Let's take a listen. So I have a drum loop going on here that has a very sharp crash happening right here. And I'd like to get that a little bit under control without making the drum loop more dull overall. So I just go up here to a brand new de-esser plugin in the Studio One browser, drag and drop that onto the track. And here we have a couple of controls. So the frequency control allows us to set a range from 2 kilohertz and up all the way to 12 kilohertz and up. And this is the range that we're going to attenuate to make the higher frequencies sound less sharp in our ear. There's two controls here that help us set that frequency just right. The first one is a listen button. This allows us to audition the frequency range overall on which the de-esser is currently working. And solo really just lets us listen to what the de-esser is currently taking out of the drum loop. So ideally, we would set that in a way that we're only hearing frequencies that we don't want to hear afterward anymore. We can also select a shape wide or narrow. Wide is probably going to sound a bit more musical because it's more gentle, but narrow is more surgical if you know exactly where the problem frequency resides. Then there's the range. You can select a full attenuation beyond 6 decibels or a gentle attenuation of just 6 decibels. Gentle, of course, sounds a bit more natural, but full really goes to the bottom of the issue and surgically removes all of the problems. Let's listen to that A-B without the solo button, of course. This is with the de-esser. And this without, you can hear, so sharp. I definitely prefer it with the de-esser. It's just great to hear how transparent it is, that it's really just touching the problematic frequencies and everything else sounds just as high fidelity as it did before. One of the most popular feature requests in Studio One was the addition of a vocoder, and we've added sidechain input for instruments so that you can use any of the vocoders that you already have as virtual instruments in Studio One. But we've also added our very own take on a vocoder inside of the effects section of Studio One's browser. It's a super versatile tool that you can use on its own, on any kind of drum loop, for instance, or vocal, and you can also modulate it from a synthesizer or any virtual instrument on another track. So I have the vocoder here already inserted onto my track. You can do so once again by dragging and dropping from Studio One's browser. And when you open it up, it has that super nice Kraftwerk style look to it. I just love it. And I just went ahead here and inserted the vocoder onto an audio track where I currently have a hip hop drum loop. So this is the drum loop without the vocoder on it. And this is with the vocoder. It's almost like a saturation. It sounds super great. You can use this patch matrix here to shape the frequency response of the loop and mix that with the dry signal in parallel to find that perfect balance. But that's not where the fun stops. You can also click on the sidechain button here and bring in the signal of a different instrument like my Thai. I have my Thai sitting here on this particular track. And this can modulate the source that is already on this audio track. In this case, it would be this hip hop drum loop. And that can also sound incredibly interesting, as you're gonna see in just a moment. So I have sidechain enabled here on the my Thai. I have a little melody prepared. And let's check out what that sounds like together with the drum loop vocoder. Incredible, right? And that's just one vocoder plugin with a synthesizer going into it via sidechain. Who knows what this would sound like when you switch to a different virtual instrument, when you start arpeggiating or sequencing that synthesizer, or when you just switch to a different preset altogether. Incredible, the amount of opportunities. This is gonna be a never-ending source of sound design. The popular autofilter plugin also received a nice little overhaul. It's now possible to set independent attack and release times on the envelope follower. This can have a great effect on the sound and gives you more control over the modulation overall. You can do so by clicking on auto, and now you're able to set the attack and release of the follower separate. This can have a big effect on the sound, for example, when modulating the cutoff. So there you have it. Those are the plugin updates that we have for you in Studio One 6. We have the dynamic EQ with sidechain, the de-esser plugin, the brand new vocoder, sidechain instrument input, and last but not least, the auto filter, which now comes with adjustable attack and release times for the envelope.
Joe here. Let's check out some of the new mixer features in Studio One version 6. Up first, fader flip. If you've ever used a digital console, the idea of fader flip might be familiar to you. Here's a mix, and here are some channels here, and I've got these, they all have sends on them going to my plate reverb. And to adjust the level of the send, we adjust this horizontal slider here. By the way, if we double click on that, here's a brand new feature. It opens up a bigger version of that, so you can adjust it even more finely. We've also added that to the panners as well on the channels. Open up the pan, double click on the panner, and it'll open up this big honking thing. If I wanted to adjust these with a fader, so for example, let's say I have a lot of tracks sending to that plate reverb, or perhaps I have a lot of tracks sending to a headphone mix, and I'd like to just have faders available to adjust that instead of the left to right slider. We can do that now. You may notice over here on the left-hand side, we have a new button called Activate Fader Flip. When I click that, check out what happens. I'm going to click it a couple times. So when fader flip is enabled, we can see that the send is now green, letting us know this is the particular thing that has been flipped. And now we can see any tracks that don't have a plate reverb send on them have turned gray and are turned all the way down. But the ones that do have a plate reverb, the fader is now performing the same duty as that horizontal slider. So now I can adjust my plate reverb sends on the faders, and when I'm done, I just click the button again. This can all be assigned to keyboard shortcuts, which makes it even more fun. So whatever I have set up in the send section, whether it's a effects send or sending to a cue mix, I can now access with fade or flip. Another cool setting that I like, and I'm probably going to use it this way, is if you select this hide unassigned faders, check out what happens. Now when I flip the faders, I will only see the channels that have a plate reverb send on them, so I can quickly just get to what I need to get to and then undo, and now I'm seeing all my tracks again. Up next, pan modes. This has been a big feature request. If I double click on the panner, I showed you this already, it pops up this bigger panning window, which is super handy, but you might have noticed there's a drop down here now. I can now change how this particular panner works. And specifically when it is a stereo panner, historically this has been the only way you could do panning on the channel itself inside the console. Now we can switch to a dual panner, which means I can adjust the left pan independently of the right pan, or I can set it to binaural panning, which acts a lot more like a binaural panner or our binaural pan plugin, which means I can adjust the left to right panning as well as the width with a single control here. And I can change those depending on what I'm looking for. So on a mono channel, it stays the same because there's nothing to change there. But on a stereo channel, such as a bus, like this acoustic guitar bus, I can double click and I can change it to whichever one I need. So if you've got a piano, for example, and the left and right is a little wonky, and you want to bring the left in, but you want to leave the right where it is, with the dual pan, we can now do that. Look at that, that's super cool. I can adjust them. I can adjust the width all the way out like that. We can even type in the width here, 50%, and then within that 50%, we can move that to the left and the right, or I can move each one individually like this. So you can really dial in exactly where you want to place things in the stereo spectrum. Up next, channel overview. This one is really fun. So here's a vocal channel here. I've got 3 plugins and a reverb send. If I open up one of those plugins, we can see the plugin here like we've always been able to, but we have a new button here on the top left-hand side of the plugin window called Overview. Check out what happens when we click that. We now have kind of a blown-up view of everything that's happening on this specific channel. So I can see all the channel information here, I can see the list of inserts here, the list of sends here, and even the cue mixes here. So it's a nice way to kind of see, okay, what's going on my vocal, and we can expand this out and maybe see more things than we could in the channel itself. It's just a cool way of working. Now, the way I would use this if I was you is click the pen to keep the editor open at all times, and maybe pop that in maybe the top right of your window. And so now whenever I select a different channel, I'm getting this really cool view of exactly what's happening on that channel. So if there's a whole lot of plugins, I can see all of them. If there's not a whole lot, that's fine as well. But it's a cool new workflow that you might want to experiment with. Could be very cool. Up next, track icons. You may have seen this already in the channel overview, but if we click the wrench inside of the console, we now have a new option called channel icons, which loads up these suckers right here. So we can now, by just clicking down here, we have a whole host of icons to choose from. They're organized in categories. So if I've got a guitar here, I can throw a different acoustic on that one. We've got keyboard, we've got vocals, lots of cool icons, which lets you just visually kind of see what's happening in your mix session. And guess what? You can actually do this over in the arranger as well. We can show track icons here. And now I can add in all my favorite guitar icons and whatever I want. Super fun. Third-party plugin micro views. One of my favorite features in Studio One has been for years the ability to single-click on a plugin and see what's happening with that plugin visually without having to open up the full plugin window. Unfortunately, that's only worked with Studio One plugins like Pro EQ, VT1, things like that. We've now added the ability to add some parameters to this feature, even if they're third-party plugins. So for example, if I drag this limiter here, and I single click on it, this is not a Studio One or Personas plugin, I can now see different parameters here that I can adjust. So it becomes a really cool workflow piece. If I use the same couple of third-party plugins and I know which parameters I want to adjust, I can just come in here and make adjustments to that plugin without having to open the full thing. And that shows up here in the channel overview. It also shows up in the main view as well. We can see those same parameters there. Obviously, this combined with the new channel overview feature is super handy because I've got more kind of screen real estate to deal with this. So I could have all my favorite parameters lined up here and I can make all my adjustments without having to ever change windows, which imagine how that could speed up your workflow. Now, Plugins have lots of different parameters available to them. There may be some that you want to see, some that you never want to see. We give you that option as well. If you right-click and choose Set Up Micro Edit Parameters, we can now say, here are all the parameters available. Holy smokes. Here are the ones that are going to show up. And then we can just add and remove whichever ones we want. So maybe I don't want to adjust the style, but I do want to adjust the noise shaping feature. I can add that here. We can put them in whatever order we want, and then that's what will show up here. So really, I mean, think of your favorite plugins. You can customize this to your heart's content, and this will show you the top 5 parameters that you choose. Track presets. I've got a blank session here because I want to show this to you. If I click the Add Tracks button, you'll see this window. It looks familiar, but there's a new button down here called Load Track Preset. Check this out. Let's say I want to load the drum kit track preset. I say OK, and look what happens. Studio One didn't just add a single channel, it added a bunch of channels and a folder and a bus and an effects send. Check it out. I've got my bus here for my drum kit. I've got all these channels for my individual pieces of the kit, and then some of these have reverb sends on them already going to this drum room plugin, and I did all of that with one click. So if you have certain combinations of tracks that you use with certain plugins, certain arrangement, even a certain folder and routing, you can save all of that as a track preset and bring that into a session. No longer do you have to go find a session that you've done before and then import that song data. You can actually save all of that as a set track preset and then bring that in. This is a great way of, maybe you don't want to do a full template, but you do have like things that you do on a regular basis. Someone sends you a song and you want to add in your own collection of tracks that you always use. This is a great way to bring those in instantly. There's more stuff under the hood, but that gives you a good overview of some of the new stuff we've added to the mixer in version 6.
Working with video has become an integral part of many different audio production workflows and is no longer limited to composers and producers working for film and television. Artists, bands, producers, and songwriters are at the same time video content creators now who need to produce content to promote their work either on social media or on their artist websites. And that's why Studio One 6 has such a strong focus on video with a brand new and reworked video track featuring many of the great workflows that you know and love from Studio One. To demonstrate all this, let me go ahead and click on New here on Studio One Start page and then go to the Create Content Smart Template, which is fantastic because you can see that this will automatically hide the instrument browser, for example, which I don't need if I'm working just with audio and video content. And it also comes with a great sounding podcast and content creation channel strip that is already configured and ready to record. Here inside of the Global Track Controls menu bar in Studio One, locate the new video button and click to open it up. If you don't see that because your track list might not be wide enough, then just select video from this pop-up menu right here. While video support in previous versions of Studio One Professional had been limited to a floating video window, the new video track provides a far more intuitive video workflow based on many of the familiar drag and drop workflows that you know and love from audio and instrument tracks. Video clips are added to the timeline by simply dragging the video file anywhere onto the global video track. Finding the correct starting position or offset for your video track is super easy. You can just move it around on the timeline just like any other event. Or you can also use the familiar nudge commands in Studio One. On a Mac, that would be Command and left-right arrow, or on Windows, Control and left-right arrow. Thumbnails for the video track are generated automatically and are easy to navigate right after importing the video file. The new video track can hold an unlimited amount of video clips, so not just one like before, making it easy to work on multiple reels of a feature film, for instance, inside of a single session. Most of the Studio One edit commands that you know from audio and instrument tracks work on the video track as well. This includes trimming, cutting, copying, and pasting, slip edit, which is great if you don't want to move the event container, just the content inside, time and edit logs to prevent any accidental changes, ripple edit, which makes the different events snap onto each other kind of magnetically as you're deleting something, for instance, duplicate with the famous D key, or replace, which you can do just like replacing a sample now in Studio One by holding down Option on a Mac or Alt on Windows as you're dragging a file onto the old file. This is useful if you want to keep the edits, the timecode positions, and everything the same as you're working on a video. You really just want to update to the latest version of it. When working with video, it's also important to make sure that the song frame rate matches the frame rate of the imported video so that you can time your audio to the frames. And Studio One 6 offers several options to match the frame rate of video and song. You can either right-click here to get the context menu of the video track controls and select Use Video Frame Rate in Timeline, which is also available as a keyboard shortcut, by the way. Or you can set this directly in the song setup dialog by clicking from video next to the frame rate value field. This will automatically gather the frame rate from the video file, so you don't even need to know it or look it up anymore. To match the song's frame rate automatically when a video clip is imported next time, then just go to Preferences, Advanced, Video, and check Set Song Frame Rate to Video Frame Rate on Import Video File. And that's it. Set and forget. So there you have it. That's the new video track, which is perfect to create some content for YouTube, for Reels and so forth, but it also comes in helpful as you're scoring a composition for film.
In the past, this has been my vocal recording workflow. I put Studio One over on the left-hand side of the screen. I open up my Notes app on the right-hand side of the screen so I can see my lyrics while I record. It's a clunky workflow that we've solved with version 6, introducing the new lyric track in Studio One. You may already be familiar with the chord track and the accompanying chord display. Well, guess what? Now we have that for lyrics as well. If I click on this and choose the lyric display, we can now see our lyrics show up across the top here, and they line up with where they need to be in the song. More than that, we can actually click on this L and pull up the lyrics display, and it's a follow the bouncing ball situation. The blue lyric is the current one, and then as we navigate around the session, the current lyric will be lit up. This is great if you're producing a song for someone else. They send you the lyrics and they say, can I go to that part where I sing Always Thought I'd Be Invincible? And I can say, yeah, no problem. I just click and it takes me there. No, take me to the second chorus. Oh, okay. Or maybe let's go to the second verse. So now the lyrics display can be a way to navigate the session. Super handy, especially if you're not the one who wrote the song and it's someone else's lyrics. Lyrics editor. Within the lyrics display, if we click on the pencil here, we can go into edit mode, which basically allows us to copy and paste our lyrics into the song, and then we can adjust where they show up here on the timeline. So for example, this first line happens at bar 7, but if it was supposed to be bar 8, I can just press space bar and it will move it over. And we can continue all the way down to line up our lyrics with the exact right position in the song. Lyrics on instruments. In addition to the global lyrics display, we can have lyrics assigned to specific instruments. For example, the soprano solo in this piece has these lyrics. And they show up here in the lyrics display, but they also show up here. If we double click on the event, we can see the lyrics down here tied to the MIDI notes for this part. And I'll do you one better. If we switch over to score view, we now have a beautiful musical layout of this part that we could, for example, print out for the musician who's coming over to record this vocal today. I foresee a lot of people getting a lot of mileage out of this lyric track.
From its humble beginnings more than 10 years ago, Studio One has truly come a long way as a software and has become more and more powerful with every new version as we added more and more exciting features. But due to the complexity of many of these features added, Studio One has also become potentially a software that became more and more difficult to learn, and the barrier of entry for new users became higher and higher. That is what we're trying to combat with an exciting new approach to music making and content creation in version 6 with smart templates. You find the smart templates inside our Studio One start page by clicking on New, and I'm going to show several of these smart templates throughout my presentation here. I'm going to feature the Produce Beats template, but also the Create Content template, which all set up Studio One in completely different ways, as you're going to see. But what I especially enjoy is that smart templates approach Studio One from a different premise, from a question, what do you want to do today? So if I'm saying I just want to record a couple of audio tracks, or maybe I just want to play a single instrument, I just have a melody idea and I need to record it as fast as possible before it's gone. Then just select the Play Now template, choose the instrument that you want to play. So in my case, I'm going to go for the synthesizer, hit OK, and start playing. You have a synthesizer right here ready to play for you. So without any additional barriers, you can just start recording right away. It just takes one click onto this red button here and you're good to go, right? But more than that, smart templates also come with tutorials that highlight different areas of Studio One that are going to be relevant for the task at hand. And you can just follow along step by step. It also teaches you, in this case, for instance, how you can assign hardware controls to a plugin to start controlling it from a MIDI controller. And if you're more experienced in Studio One, you'll also notice, this is my favorite part actually, it has hidden a couple of user interface icons and menu buttons from View that are not relevant for what you're currently trying to do. This is made possible through the amazing new customization editor available to us in Studio One 6, not just in Smart Templates, but in any kind of Studio One songs. Let's say that I'm just doing audio post-production today, so I don't need to see anything related to MIDI, virtual instruments, and so forth. Well, then I'll just go to View, Customization, Edit Customization, and switch to Audio Editing. And notice that has just hidden quite a few buttons from View, and we can go even further than that. We could say, why would I need to see the instrument section here of Studio One's browser when I'm working just with audio? Why would I need to see MIDI monitor activity in the transport bar? Why would I need to see sync to external devices that can go as well? And what makes this so powerful is that you can create presets from that you can switch extremely quickly. So you could go from an audio editing workflow directly into a virtual instrument workflow, into a content creation workflow. And Studio One's interface would always shift and adapt to the current task at hand so that you only see buttons that are relevant to your current workflow. This is a truly amazing feature that Smart Templates also take advantage of. And now, without any further ado, I want to show you one of my favorite Smart Templates in action, Produce Beats. So right away, when you open up Studio One 6, this is what you see. And you just click on New here on the start page and then select Produce Beats. Give that a name, like Make a Beat, and open it up by clicking OK. Now, when you open the template, you get this tutorial here that will guide you through all of the important steps. But I'm also going to guide you through in this video here, so just follow along with me. This template comes with 3 virtual instruments covering drums, bass line, and chord/arpeggio synthesizers. So this would be already enough to get some kind of an electronic beat, maybe a techno beat going. And yeah, let me just show you how easy it is to get started. So here we already have the step sequencer open, and we can hear and audition the different sounds available by simply clicking on them here in the pattern editor. Once we've selected the kick drum, for instance, we can just click here where it says set every 4th step to get a 4/4 kick drum happening right away. And to audition that, you just hit play by hitting the spacebar on your keyboard. Once that beat is playing, you can just add a snare by simply clicking wherever you want to place them. You can also just draw in a couple of hi-hats like that. And you just get off to the races like that. Now, one thing I especially enjoy is setting a different step amount for one of the sounds that we have playing in our pattern. You can set different step lengths or step amounts for each of the individual sounds available in the pattern. And to do so, you just click here where it says 16 with a left click on your mouse and change that to, for example, 5. Now you see that this particular sound would now only loop for 5 steps and starting over, while everything else keeps playing 16 steps and playing over. So basically, this sound will always play at a different point in time with everything else. And this can create some incredibly interesting polyrhythms, for instance. So let's just try this and set a step here on step number 3. I just gave that step an accent by holding down Command on a Mac or Control on Windows, so you can hear it more clearly. And that already gets so much more life into the beat, right? Now we can click here on the automation lane panel and adjust, for example, the probability that this percussion hit here is actually playing to maybe 50% or something like that. Now you can't predict anymore at what point this starts happening. And you immediately get tons of variation in your pattern. Another really cool thing we can do is adjust the amount of re-triggers per step. So we could once again select this stick percussion here and then go to the repeat panel right here. If I set that to 1, for instance, then this 16th note would re-trigger once again within the 16th note. So you can also get really glitchy with that. Can be great for trap hi-hats, for instance. Let's just see what this would sound like. And then it's just great to add a couple of steps randomly by just clicking around. You'd be surprised how great that starts sounding. Let's add a bass line to that, shall we? To add a bass line, all we need to do is just select the track right underneath the drum pattern here from the track list, this yellow one labeled bass line. And you can see already the step sequencer opens up for us to get started right away. So I hit play, the pattern starts playing immediately. And now I just search a good octave to add some kind of bass line. This is just trial and error. It's all it is. And of course, we can once again work with probabilities. So as you can see, the pattern mode and the produce beat template make it super easy to get started making beats in Studio One right away. Of course, you can swap out any of the presets, the sounds that you've heard with your own favorite ones. The awesome immediate workflow stays the same, which opens up a whole world of possibilities for you. Pressonosphere also has some exciting new updates with the launch of Studio One 6. Pressonosphere users benefit from new collaboration features in Studio One 6. To share documents online and collaborate with other users, it's no longer necessary to manually archive and upload zip files. You can now share a whole song, show, or project folder, including all of its files, while reducing upload and download times by only transferring the files that have actually been modified since last time. Working on the project together as a team doesn't even require all members to be Pressonosphere members. Once a Pressonosphere member has created and shared their workspace and shared the original document, any Studio One 6 user will be able to collaborate with them. We've also overhauled the Pressonosphere Learn experience completely. Pressonosphere now gives you exclusive access to not just hundreds of hours of masterclass videos that aren't available anywhere else, but they're also now structured in comprehensive lessons and courses designed to make you a better producer. Learn the basics of gain staging, reverb, compression, and EQ, or if you're already a more advanced user, dive deeper and learn, for example, how to perfect your vocal tuning skills with Marcus Hoskins. What sets learning on Pressonosphere apart from other video platforms is that you can add notes directly to any video, which can be associated with a timestamp, which makes it super easy to remember and revisit key content. Let's say that I'm taking a note here on Marcus Hoskins' video, then I can just write that comment. It's gonna be timestamped at this exact point in time. And when I go back to the video and click on my comment, the video is gonna play from that point onward. This is an incredible learning tool and it's only gonna get better from here.
So how do you get your hands on Studio One version 6? There's a couple of ways to do that. Let me go over those with you really quickly. If you're a Pressonosphere member, you've already got it in your account. Just log into the members area, download the installer, and have fun. If you purchased Studio One version 5 on or after August 1st of this year, you get access to version 6 for free. Just log into your My Presonus account and you should be able to download it there. The easiest and most cost-effective way to get into version 6 is to become a Pressonosphere member. You can join for as little as $14.95 a month. There's also an annual option to save even more money. If you want to purchase Studio One outright, you can do that as well. There's Studio One Professional and Studio One Artist. You can purchase those at Presonus.com or your favorite audio retailer. Also, if you have a previous version of Studio One, You can upgrade to the current version at a discount. You can even cross-grade from another recording software into Studio One at a discount as well. For details about that, head over to Presonus.com or your favorite audio retailer.